Business athletes, welcome back for another action-packed episode. This one is going to be a banger. Very, very practical, first off. And it's all around the fast-track fat loss protocol, 30 days to transform your body. Basically, guys, what I would do if I wanted to get in the best shape possible in 30 days. From wherever you are, whether you're 100 pounds overweight or you need to put on some weight because you're too thin, it does not matter. These principles will absolutely apply. And I thought about it and I thought to myself, why not talk about this now? Because at the time of this recording, we're just coming into spring. So spring 2026. And what I find for a lot of people is they usually come out of winter sort of semi-comatose, dealing with the hibernation vibes that most people experience, where it's colder, the days are shorter, you don't move as much, you just feel less motivated, you typically get more cravings and hunger, and so you just generally feel like garbage more. A lot of people do. Now, obviously that's a whole other topic in and of itself, but as we come into spring, I think people start to feel a little bit more positive, a little bit more optimistic. And even if you don't, I think that your ability to drop the hammer on a 30-day process and just put your head down and get to work is a really good place to begin. You'd actually be surprised at how many results, how much of a result you can create in 30 days. Most people don't realize that. Now, obviously, I think you've got to play a longer game long term, but I do think that really locking in for 30 days, 4 weeks of just intense processes. And when I say intense, I don't mean it doesn't have to be so intense you're killing yourself. It's just intentional, very intentional. And in fact, I would actually tell you that my systems and tools and steps that I'm going to share with you, I actually think are the easier way to achieve the result, because I really have a good understanding of how to get the body in a flow state. You know, one of the things that a lot of fitness people do is that they just focus on calories and macros and supplements and peptides and the workouts. They focus on those three variables. They don't really focus on nervous system strain and burnout. They don't really think about digestive health. They don't really understand how to create more energy on a mitochondrial level. And they don't really always understand how to optimize sleep either. And so if you are being diligent with your calories and your macros, maybe you've even got a meal prep service, but you're sleeping like trash, you're inside all day, not getting any light exposure, your step count's below 10,000, even those variables alone will massively de-optimize your result. And then you feel like you're sort of wading through molasses. It's that feeling of you're showing up, you're putting in the work, but the result seems like garbage. There's a real reason for that. And I'm going to talk you through this in some detail today. So at the end of this episode, you will have very clear pillars and principles that you can go away and start doing tomorrow to get you and yourself an amazing result in the next 4 weeks. So if you get some value out of this, please share the episode. Please leave a review. I never really ask for that stuff, and then I realized, hey, I probably should just remind people. So I would love if you could leave a review for me. Please share this. Tag me in the post. I do this just because I want to help people, and I'm just dropping all my knowledge that people will pay me thousands of dollars to get access to. And I just want to share it with people to help empower you to be a better version of yourself, because the ripple effect of that is freaking awesome. So the first thing that we'll touch on, we've got some pillars here. We've got a set of pillars that I've broken things down into. Now, and this is in no particular order, but I wanted to start with some of the ones that are common, like people know these things, and then we'll get into some more of the nuanced stuff that's kind of unique to me and what I talk about. But we will be covering everything from like peptides, like GLP-1s, different types of supplements, gut health, you name it. Now, pillar number 1 is calorie control and tracking. Now, I will tell you that at this point in my journey, probably at about 6 to 7% body fat and just maintaining that all year, I don't even track calories. I don't track anything. I don't count anything. Now, I will tell you that early on, when you're starting a process like this, and especially if you want to accelerate your results, it's probably a good idea to do some kind of tracking system. Because if you don't, and you're not really well versed, it won't be as potent. So the first thing that I would say is there's really two main conduits to tracking your food intake. The first one is your traditional calorie counting model. So you could either use, MyFitnessPal or Chronometer. I think there's other apps like Macro Factor. There's a few out there, but Chronometer and MyFitnessPal are the primary ones. And in those apps, you can basically plug in your stats. So your height, your weight, how many times you train, general things like that. And it's going to give you an approximation of your total calorie consumption for your basal metabolic rate. And it's going to then give you a bit of a target or breakdown on protein intake and then carbohydrates and fats. Now, the first thing that I'll tell you is that a general rule of thumb that I start with when I'm trying to determine calories and macros in anyone is I will take your weight in pounds and I will multiply that by 10. So let's say you're 200 pounds and you want to lose weight. I will multiply that by 10. That's going to put you at about 2,000 calories. That would be where I start. It doesn't necessarily mean it's where I stay, but that's where I start. Now, obviously, if your goal is like you want to gain a bunch of muscle and build over 4 weeks, you are going to have to do different math. But generally speaking, if you want to lose body fat, maintain and even potentially build muscle, you want your weight in pounds multiplied by about 10. That's, again, a start point. You will find that depending on your activity levels and your baseline metabolism, you may actually have to increase that to multiplied by 11 or 12, or you may even have to multiply it by 9. If you're in a place where you need to strip a little bit more down, then you might have to do that. Now, the way to determine if this is accurate or not is just start. Literally, get your calories, body weight multiplied by 10, then you take your protein target. That's going to be your protein is going to be weight in grams per pound of target body weight. So let's say you're 200 pounds, but you want to be 180. You'd go for about 180 grams of protein. That way, you're actually like working your way into the physique you want. So now you've got your protein target established. You then take the rest of your calories and you basically can disperse them equal in whatever ratio you want for starchy carbohydrates and whole food fats. Now, if you haven't done a lot of calorie counting before, I would tell you to go to YouTube and just find, search calorie counting tutorial. Because I don't want to go into too much detail about that in here because that's a whole other topic in and of itself. But basically, your grams of protein gets multiplied by 4 because there's 4 calories for every 1 gram of protein. That's going to give you your total calories of your protein. And then the remaining calories you can split between fats and carbohydrates. Now, what I typically tell people is that if you're like, well, what should my ratio of fats to carbohydrates look like? I typically just say, do like a 50-50 split ratio. And then it might vary just depending on your preferences. But I typically tell people that if, for women, for example, I find that doing a slightly higher whole food fat ratio tends to be a little bit better. It seems to work better with hormone profiles. And it seems to be easier on the gut. There's 9 calories for every 1 gram of fat. So the portions aren't as big. I find women tend to not really enjoy big portions of food as much. And they can almost run the risk of like under eating at times if they're not conscious about it. So I would say, generally speaking, whole food fats. Now, I would preference this by saying you want to make sure that the fats you're consuming, ideally, are whole food and monounsaturated omega-3s. So by whole foods, I mean don't add a ton of oil, a ton of cooking oil and stuff, butter and ghee and olive oil. You want to keep the oils to a minimum because to me, there's much better food options that you can pack your diet with than just like dumping bunches of oils on food to cook it. It's not a high ROI in my opinion. So what I'd be doing instead is I'd be looking for things like avocado, hemp seed, hummus, whole olives, maybe a little bit of Blueprint extra virgin olive oil, lean types of omega-3 rich fish, for example. You want more of those monounsaturated omega-3 based fats. That's definitely going to put you in a position where it's going to improve your lipid profiles, your cholesterol profiles, and your hormone profiles. Now, you can, depending on your blood work, do a little bit of saturated fats, but I typically would tell people to keep that a little bit less. Generally speaking, most people respond better to monounsaturated because that's like the quote-unquote healthy fats. Don't need to go too much detail. What I would tell you is if you want to problem solve this on a higher level, get into my Business Athlete Council. Because at that point, I can look at your blood work and give you specific feedback around this. Right now, I'm just speculating because I have to try to give a blanket statement that applies to everyone. Whereas some people will have what's called a bit of hypolipidemia, meaning you have a tendency to run high LDL and ApoB. In that instance, slamming back bacon and tons of eggs and cooking in ghee is going to make that worse. It doesn't do it for everyone, though. Some people don't have hypolipidemia, but there's a genetic variability to this. And so I typically tell people just to play it safe, it's better to assume that you probably do. And then that way you're just adding in the monounsaturated fats and you're going to make sure it's going to set you up to win anyway. So you can basically add avocado to every meal if you wanted. That's a base approach that you could do. So the first thing is your fat type. The second thing is your carbohydrates. Now, what I would tell you is that in general, first thing is eat the rainbow. And I'm going to be talking about that in pillar number 2 around macronutrients and micronutrients. But I typically like to go for what I call root vegetables more than grains. So grains are going to be things like your jasmine rice, basmati rice, quinoa, couscous, buckwheat, amaranth, all the ancient grains and the type of rice variants. I don't think there's anything wrong with those things. I just find in general, people's digestion doesn't seem to adopt and metabolize them quite as well. Now, you have some people where it's fine, but again, speaking in generalities here, so it applies to everyone. Now, if I was going to do some grains, I'd probably opt for basmati or jasmine rice or a little bit of couscous. Those are typically my favorites. But I prefer root vegetables. So your root vegetables are going to be your sweet potato, your Japanese sweet potato, purple potatoes, gold, red potatoes, even things down to butternut squash and spaghetti squash. So I say this because I think in terms of bang for buck, in terms of satiety levels, like keeping you fuller for longer, and in terms of nutrient profile, you tend to get a better ROI with root vegetables, especially things like purple potato or Japanese sweet potato. So that would be some type of starchy carbohydrate I splice into my carbohydrate allocation each day. Outside of that, I typically would stick to fruits that are low glycemic index, high in antioxidant value. So blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. I'd even add in maybe a little bit of red grapefruit. Those are going to be like the core foundational things, and I would typically position those post-workout. So post-work, what I'd be doing is I'd be pushing in blueberries, blackberries, and raspberries with a little bit of red grapefruit juice, and I'd be doing that post-workout to kind of get that glycogen replacement into my system. And I'd be consuming my protein powder, like my smoothie or whatever I have, next to that. Now, what I'd also be doing is I'd then push some starchy carbohydrates into my dinner and my lunch meal. Now, I might start off with, say 200 calories. And then in week 2, you might splice it down to 150 calories. And then week 3, you dropped it down to 100 calories. So can you see how over the course of first week, second week, third week, fourth week, you're basically like refining and tweaking the portion size. And so I'd be refining and tweaking the portion size of my carbohydrates and my fats. I'd be slowly ripping those down. I'd keep protein the same, and I would keep the insoluble fibrous carbohydrates, like your rainbow stuff, your greens, that type of thing. I'd keep that at a baseline. I keep that pretty consistent. Now, what I'd be doing in terms of calories is I would look at how my body responds. If you do the calories multiplied by 10 and you don't see any change, it just means that your metabolism right now is not where it should be. Now, we can solve that problem later on, but what I would tell you is you just need to pull your calories down. It's just purely a math problem at that point. So you just need to pull your calories down and go from, say, like 2,000 calories to 1,800, which means that I'd be pulling out, 100 calories of starchy carbohydrates and 100 calories of fats, keeping protein the same. You want to keep pulling the calories out till you start to see the shift in weight. That's the key. And then each week, like I said, you can pull calories out more and more and more. Now, one thing I will say is depending on the person and depending on where they're at with their metabolism, I might do a strategic refeed meal every week. So on a day where I train legs and I'm training on the day and the next day, I'd push maybe 2,300 to 2,400 calories into the system and really like loading in some more carbohydrates post-workout. And I do this to basically sort of rev up the basal metabolic rate, to rev up the furnace. So then when you go back down to your lower amount of calories, your body's hyper responsive. It's burning. It's chewing through the body fat because the metabolism has just been revved. So again, not everyone should do that, but I would say for a lot of people, doing a strategic refeed can be really useful. And in fact, I've done a whole episode on cheat meals and refeeds around like the strategy around that concept. So make sure you go through all the other episodes in this podcast because there's tactical, practical nuggets in all of these things. Now, what I would be thinking about is the other way to track your calories is essentially use metric measuring cups and tablespoons. Now, this is not quite as accurate, but say, for example, you just know you're going to really struggle with counting calories and weighing everything specifically. Get yourself a set of metric measuring cups, a quarter cup, half cup, full cup, 2/3 cup, that type of thing. And then what you would do is you can basically then make sure that your portion fits that cup size. One of the things that I think can be useful to do is there are metric measuring cups on Amazon that also have a little digital scale built into them. So what it does is it will not only give you a visual of it will tell you, when you put the food in the cup, it will say this is 2/3 of a cup. This is 1.5 cups. This is 3/4 of a cup. And in that way, you can really get accurate because think about it. If you have like a chicken breast or a block of tofu, it can be pretty hard to get it to know, is this 1 cup? Because the cup shape is not the same shape as the chicken breast. So it's hard to get an accurate read on that. Whereas if you use the metric measuring cup with the little digital built-in scale, it will tell you based on the weight, this is about 1 cup. I like to use cups personally because I find it's just a faster process and I don't have to be doing any math equations and sort of weighing things. So say, for example, if you've got your protein and let's say you're doing 1 full cup of starchy carbohydrates for each meal in week 1. In week 2, you might pull it down to 3/4 of a cup. And then week 3, you pull it down to half a cup. And then week 4, you pull it down to 1/4 of a cup. So basically, it's like a sliding scale. You want to adopt that sliding scale process. If you are trying to get in great shape and you're eating healthy, but you're not either tracking and weighing stuff or using volumetrics like the measuring cups, you can absolutely blunt all your progress. You got to remember that getting in great shape physically, losing body fat, it's not just about eating quote unquote healthy foods. If you eat enough healthy foods, you can actually gain weight and get more fat because it's just too many calories for your metabolism. So I would say that's one of the common things that I notice with when people join my process. Often the first thing that I get them to focus on is just eating the clean, healthy foods first. Because that's going to improve inflammation markers, it's going to help improve energy levels, it's going to help improve sleep, and improve gut health, all these key things in the body first. Once they get into a little bit of a routine, then I focus on adapting the portions and undulating and adjusting them up and down based off how their body is responding. So in summary with that part, Calorie counting, either weighing things and using the number crunching or using metric measuring cups and basically adapting the calorie count each week based on how aggressive you want the fat loss. Keep the protein the same the whole time. The things that slide up and down are your whole food fats, monounsaturated omega-3s, and your starchy carbohydrates, ideally your root vegetables, and keep your insoluble fibrous rainbow vegetables kind of the same. And in fact, if you find that you're getting hungrier as the weeks go on, you could probably even increase those insoluble fibrous portions a little bit to kind of give yourself a little bit more food volume if you feel like you need to do that. Now, pillar number 2 is your macronutrients and your micronutrients. We just sort of talked about macronutrients in this previous pillar around protein, carbs, and fats. What I would tell you is the other part of this equation, and it's a pretty simple one to grasp in essence, is your micronutrients. So not macro, micronutrients. What is that? It's vitamins and minerals. A simple fundamental thing to remember is eat the rainbow. And in fact, I talk about this whole concept in episode 11, all around macro bowl design. So if you want to take this episode and cross-reference it with episode number 11 to learn how to put the meals together in a really powerful way, go listen to that episode as well. Because that's definitely going to be the thing that you will want to leverage to unlock this next level of result over the 30-day process. The simple thing to remember is that food is like software, and your body and mind are the hardware. So each colored food is representative of different vitamins and minerals. You know, that's why they talk about, carrots being high in beta carotene, which helps with your eyesight. So there's all these different things that each food will help with. Beets, for example, are dark and red, and that helps with vasodilation. So it helps with blood flow and blood pressure. So you want to get a lot of different colors in your routine because that's going to be the stuff that helps you feel better. When you have better blood flow and you have better energy levels and you're sleeping better, or like your cravings will go down, your digestion will improve, everything feels better. And when you feel better, you do better, period. So the simple thing to remember for micronutrients, and I'll say this first, macronutrients drives body composition, fat, muscle. Micronutrients drives performance recovery and internal health. You need to have both. And most people just focus on the first one. So they get in shape, but they feel like trash. And that's why you do 75 hard 7 times. Because you keep painting yourself into that corner. So we just want to be thinking about, with your macro bowl meals for lunch and dinner, you want to have, what's my red, green, and orange vegetable? Typically what I like to do is I like to do either broccoli or kale microgreens, a little bit of zucchini noodles. That's my green. I'll do some pickled beets and some red bell peppers as my red, and then I do some grated carrot as my orange. I'll even add in yellow in the form of like spaghetti squash. And that's usually my stack. Now, obviously, you could do like a stir, and I do that almost like as a salad. Now, you could do a stir fry where you do like broccoli, red peppers, and carrot. One thing that I tell people is you've got to be mindful about your digestion. Most people, they eat a lot of cruciferous vegetables. They've got the cauliflower, their cabbage, their broccoli, and that's harder on the gut. Things like spaghetti squash, zucchini noodles are much easier on digestion. So I would tell you that really focusing on keeping your digestion good would be a very important part of this equation. I've done episodes on digestion for this reason, but I have, like I mentioned, spaghetti squash and zucchini noodles as a base to my meal to give myself enough volume so I feel full, but it's easy on the gut. It's not going to trigger a bunch of gas and bloating and issues. You don't want that. But remember, eat the rainbow and look at your meal and where's your red, green, and orange, and obviously yellow even, every single day for lunches and dinners. And then obviously your snacks. That's where the blueberries and the blackberries and things like that come into play. And in fact, post-workout, I'll do blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, and a few goji berries. Goji berries are very high in vitamin C. And obviously, once you've trained, that's like an inflammatory response. And what better way to bolster your immune system response to kind of help you recover than to drive more vitamin C into your system? So there's a reason why I add things in across the board. I'll even do a little bit of red grapefruit juice or some whole red grapefruit. That helps with lowering blood pressure. It's especially important for a lot of men. You've got to get that blood pressure under control. So, and I'd rather do it with food rather than taking medications and things, which you don't really need to if you have the food locked down. So micronutrients is the next part. That's a key part of the equation. I don't see enough people focusing on that macro bowl, eat the rainbow concept. The diets are one-dimensional, and that's why your result is one-dimensional. Now, this kind of ties into pillar number 3, which is the food quality and simplicity. You've got to remember some general rules of thumb when it comes to your diet. You want predominantly, if you really want to get great results in 4 weeks, you want predominantly 90+% of your diet as whole foods with one ingredient. Brown rice is just brown rice. Blueberries are just blueberries, right? So like you want to have a combination of foods, 90% plus, that are just one ingredient foods. Now your other 10% is still going to be healthy-ish stuff. So it's going to be, say, like your protein powders or a protein bar, like a protein bar that you enjoy and love to give you some sanity so you don't deviate and eat a bunch of junk and garbage. So again, there's a time and place for certain things that I would say have a higher risk to reward than just trying to abstain from them completely and then you crash and burn and like go on a binge eating festival. So just remember, eat the rainbow, micronutrients, look at your plate, whole foods, 90+% of your foods are whole food, one ingredient of foods. That automatically reduces all the ultra-processed foods out of your rotation. And then obviously thinking about post-workout carbohydrates, like the staple foods are going to be things like berries, citrus, lemon, grapefruit, goji berries. It's going to look like lean, like a couple of different lean proteins, root vegetables, or a little bit of whole food grains with the Eat the Rainbow concept tacked on. Now, what I would say as a additional point that I really want to emphasize here is when it comes to the meal creation, leverage an air fryer as much as you can. Don't cook in oils in a pan because that's just going to add extra calories to your meal that you don't need. You want to try and rip calories out as hard and fast as you can. So leverage an air fryer or leverage like a hex clad or a green pan. Though there are some ceramic non-stick pans where you don't have to drown it in some type of oil like a cast iron skillet would. So you want to leave that out of the equation for now. And the other thing that you want to do is you need good flavor. So things like New Sauce, Flavor Gang, Taste Flavor Company, sugar-free G. Hughes barbecue sauce. I would say that the one that I think is going to have the best ROI is New Sauce. Now, New Sauce, New Sauce, that has a cleaner nutrient profile. It doesn't have as much processed stuff in it. But I will say there's a time and place for certain things, and I would tell you to solve problems in the right order. If you're fat and out of shape and you're struggling to get your diet under control, I would rather you consume a little bit of Taste Flavor Company, low-calorie condiments that have a little bit of sucralose in them than to not do that and eat just garbage and be fat. So there's a time and place for these things. There's a context. So make sure that you have your cooking method locked down because you want food to have a good texture. You want it to be crispy if you like that sensation. Think about it. Would you rather have a nice crispy chicken breast or a piece of tofu? Or would you rather have it boiled? That makes a big difference to you sticking to the damn plan. And then obviously making sure that it's something that you enjoy the taste of. If you're not adding any flavor, you're not going to stay with this long term. So you've got to get those low-calorie condiments in the equation because people make the mistake of adding in condiments that have 100+ calories per serving. And to me, that's just a massive loss of ROI. Like, it's not worth doing that. You will blunt your fat loss a ton when you do that. So that is key. The food quality, making sure it's whole foods with one ingredient, but making sure that you are dialing in your cooking method and you are thinking about your flavoring and condiments. Very, very important. Now, pillar number 4 is base supplementation. Now, obviously, if you're in my business athlete council or you get some one-on-one coaching, we would dial in your supplementation more than this. We would look at your blood work, we would look at your digestive health and how you're feeling, and we'd essentially reverse engineer a unique process that would be ideal for you. So just know that that's why, again, it's worth getting into the rotation. But if I had to just give sort of a blanket policy around what to focus on to start with, it's going to be things like a good quality multivitamin, high quality omega-3s, some type of mineral supplement, like a mineral drop, a good quality superfood protein powder, not just a normal protein powder, a superfood protein powder, creatine monohydrate, and essential amino acids. I would say that those are the key ones. Now, bonus point for you. If you reach out and message me based off this episode, I'll give you the brands and the links for the things that I've tested and I think are probably the best right now as it stands. I've tried a lot of different supplements in this industry, and I'll rotate through things, and I do have some preferences. It's very, very important that you make sure you get good quality stuff, because the supplement industry is like the Wild West. It's like the peptide industry. And you might buy something because it's cheap, but it might be total trash. It might not even have the actual stuff in it. It's like low quality garbage full of fillers and heavy metals. That's the last thing you need. So you need to be thinking about quality, not quantity. But I definitely think a good multivitamin, it fills in all the micronutrient holes. Omega-3s, that helps with just preserving hormone health as you're dieting down, and even mood. Like double dose omega-3s have been shown to help stabilize and improve mood and depression. So it's very important that you feel good while you're doing this. And then minerals, most people don't realize that you perform with trace minerals. Like it will affect your training. If you don't get enough trace minerals in and you're sweating a lot walking outside, you will fatigue more. You won't train as well. You'll get a lot of cravings. If you get a lot of cravings, very often it's a micronutrient or mineral issue. You pinpoint and troubleshoot those things and the cravings disappear. And imagine how easy it would be to get in great shape if you're not dealing with cravings. A superfood protein powder. Now, I prefer a superfood protein powder rather than just a standard one, because again, bang for buck. If I'm going to be consuming those calories and I'm going to be getting in that protein, why not get a protein powder that's got a bunch of greens and reds and adaptogens and things in it that further enhance my nutrient profiles? So again, like I'll use products like Kachava, great product. Again, it's a little bit more expensive, but you're paying for quality. And you got to think to yourself, do you want to be the Rolls Royce or do you want to be the freaking Honda City? If you want to be a Rolls Royce, you need to put high quality fuel into that Rolls Royce. If you don't mind being a beat up old Honda City, then put the low quality stuff in. Like, where is your standards? What do you want to be known as? So again, and what I would also think about is for the women and guys of any age, creatine monohydrate. Most people don't realize that creatine is not just one of the most efficacious supplements as it stands relating to muscle building, but it's very, very good for brain health. I use it primarily for the brain health component, but it's a good supplement for anyone, but especially as you age, because that brain health component is a big part of it. And then essential amino acids. Now, I find that as you're dieting down and you're stripping calories out of your rotation, getting some essential amino acids in to buffer muscle loss can be a good tool. I mean, especially if you're pushing real hard and you're in that fourth week and you're stripping calories down and you're trying to hold as much muscle mass as you can, essential amino acids are very useful. By the way, most of them don't taste very good. I found a couple of brands that really do. So like I said, if you want those brands and preferences, just reach out and I can send you like the sort of the URL link for those. Now, base supplements, that's all I would be doing to start with. I wouldn't be adding in any other things right now, obviously. If you're in the Business Athlete Council, that's where I could give you more nuanced stuff. I mean, there's other supplements out there like NAC or NAD and berberine and inositol and magnesium L-threonate and glycine. There's some other supplements that are useful, but it just depends on you and your nutrient profiles, your blood work, and where you are at. But that's where I would start as a base to fill nutrient gaps, support recovery, and support performance and output. Now, the next pillar is going to be your peptides and hormone optimization. This is an optional layer. obviously, I will always preface this by saying you don't need these things to get in great shape. But they, for some people, can be a useful tool. They can be a useful tool. First thing I would say is you do want to get your blood work run, especially with like hormone optimization stuff, testosterone replacement therapy, hormone replacement therapy. You need to get your labs run. You need to see if you even warrant it. You need to be able to figure out the dosing, all of that stuff. One of the good things that I do with my one-on-one students is I help them figure out and refine all of these things. So if you really want that master strategy, that's where I would say get some mentoring in this arena, because this is definitely more of a high-level pillar that requires a bit more care and due diligence, in my opinion. But let's say, for example, you get your blood work run and your testosterone is low for a man. It's really important that you work through your options to get that dialed in. So whether you use some enclomiphene citrate to help naturally stimulate things, or you use maybe even some herbal supplements like Tonkat Ali and Fedosia agrestis, different herbal supplements and things like that can help naturally increase your testosterone levels. And then obviously, like I mentioned, something like an enclomiphene citrate can help stimulate your pituitary, which produces luteinizing and follicle stimulating hormone. And those are the upstream precursors to testosterone. They also help with fertility, by the way. So for any of the guys that are interested in fertility, that's like a sort of a double benefit. And then obviously testosterone replacement therapy. But that's a whole other discussion around the dosing, around the micro-dosing of it, the timing, all those different things. But I will tell you that it's very important that you get your hormone systems optimized as fast as you can, because you can be doing all the right things, but if your hormone systems are not ideal, you will not see the results that you could. And this applies to not just men, but the ladies, especially the ladies that are like going through any menopausal changes or postpartum. You've got to get that locked in. So for the ladies, you need to know your estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, and you need to make sure that you are, I would be throwing in things like seed cycling as a food tactic to optimize this as much as you can with food. I'd be thinking about looking at different types of herbal supplements. DIM, for example, is an estrogen metabolizer. Even like Shilajit can help with testosterone in the ladies. Pine pollen supplements. Now, again, I would say sort of proceed with some caution, proceed with some awareness, but that's where getting help is a really important part of the equation. But for a lot of the ladies, things like bioregulated peptides, this kind of ties into the peptide discussion. So there are a subsection of peptides called bioregulated peptides. And in fact, I believe episode number 4, I did on a deep dive on all the different peptides, not just the GLP-1 fat loss ones, but I talked in depth about bioregulators. I'm a big fan of bioregulated peptides. It's like they're like adaptogens. And so you take a bioregulated peptide for your ovaries or for your prostate. And what it does is it literally can help like uptick or pull down something to get it into like an optimal Goldilocks zone. It's an adaptogen, basically. And they have a very good safety profile. They've been studied out of Russia by Dr. Vladimir Kavinson for 30 years. Very, very good safety profile. So I would say that outside of getting hormone replacement therapy, getting some bioregulated peptides that will help optimize your sex hormone function or your thyroid function or any other systems in your body is a very, very good idea. So if you were to look at your blood work and you can see that your thyroid's not quite right, or your testicular function doesn't seem to be optimal, or you're a bit insulin resistant, so your pancreas is not doing very well, I would be getting you to use different bioregulated peptides, if you wanted to, obviously, to optimize all of those different systems in the body. That's how you get into that like flow state where your body is just low inflammation, optimal, responsive, and you get a much better outcome. Now, there are other peptides. If I was going to give anyone sort of optimal 4-week stack, it would be like a GLP-3, retatrutide, be some tesamorelin, ipamorelin, growth hormone releasing peptide blend. I'd probably use the blend called KLOW, K-L-O-W, which is a combination of KPV, BPC-157, TB-500, and GHK-Cu, which is like a recovery inflammation reducing stack. So between the growth hormone anti-aging peptides that also help with some degree of muscle growth and preservation and visceral fat burning, and then combining it with a good inflammatory recovery peptide like Calorie, and then stacking some GLP-3 retatrutide in there to help bring down hunger responses and improve insulin sensitivity. Those would be the main three that I'd be choosing. Now, there's obviously a lot more peptides out there. If you listen to episode 4, you'll realize there's a lot of different ones. There's ones that help with brain health, and there's ones that help with the immune system and everything. And I do think there's a time and place for certain ones if you do it right. One of the reasons why people will join my Business Athlete Council is to get the education around the peptide stuff. They want to come in and they want to say, hey, I have XYZ challenges. Tell me what I should do. And I've done this for years now, so I'm able to like compress down their learning curve with all of that stuff. And again, really important, this stuff is the Wild West. If you're just going to some random website and you haven't vetted it to see that they are doing third-party testing for purity and assay, like the actual concentration of the peptide, that's an issue. So you got to make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's with this stuff. So I would say in general, that would be the peptide stack I would be running right out the gate to just optimize the physiology as much as possible, either using bioregulated peptides to help with sex hormone profiles or using, some type of like intermediate intervention like in clomiphene citrate. And then obviously if someone wanted to, they can go to the hormone replacement therapy end of the range. But I will tell you that hormone replacement takes time to really work. You're not going to see massive changes in 4 weeks. It would, in my opinion, probably take 12 to 16 weeks of like steady, consistent, accumulative use to really start to notice the benefits of it. And in fact, you might even like gain some weight and put on some water retention initially with the testosterone if you don't dose it right, which I would say most people, they have physicians that don't know what the heck they're doing and they don't dose it right. So they end up like with water retention. And that's not ideal at all. Your blood pressure can go up. You have all these issues that people get. And I know how to solve all of them. I have solved all of them for many people. And it's a shame that a lot of primary care physicians do not know what the heck they're doing. Now, some do, but there's many that don't. Now, pillar number 6 is resistance training. So weight training, basically. There's 2 modalities of movement that I think are really important to get a rapid body change response. It's weight training and walking. Those 2 things. There are other tools I'm going to be talking about, but bang for buck, this is what we want to be focusing on. Now, I will tell you that if you've got 4 weeks to go, you're probably better off training 5 to 6 times a week. If you're slightly older, you might want to train every second day. I typically would say, and as a general consensus, if you're over 60, maybe you train every second day, and then on the days between, you walk and do some active rest. If you're still, in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, or even 50s, I would say you can test 5 days or 6. If you're going to do 6 days, maybe take a rest day. Whatever day is your busiest work day, if you're going to train 5 days, don't take 2 rest days back to back. So maybe you do Monday, Tuesday training, Wednesday is a rest day, you train Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday's a rest day. Do split rest days. Now, the general idea with weight training is you want to be thinking about training each muscle group 2 times a week. So 2 times a week, and you want to train the biggest muscle groups the most or the best. So legs and back should be your biggest focus because your leg muscles and your back muscles are big muscle groups. Remember, the bigger the muscle group, the bigger the metabolic response. The smaller the muscle group, the smaller the metabolic response. So if you smash your biceps, which you will do some bicep training, smaller muscles, not as much of a fat loss ROI. Training your quads or your lats, big muscles, bigger ROI. So I'd be saying if you're going to do a 6 day a week session, do push-pull legs, push-pull legs. If you're going to do 5 days, I do push-pull legs, upper body, legs. That way you're hitting each group 2 times a week. If you're training every second day, so if you're doing 4 days a week, upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body. So basically you're making sure that you're hitting each muscle group 2 times. Now, what I'd be doing is I would do a set of, I'd have a rotation of exercises. Maybe, depending on how much time you have, anywhere from 5 to 8 exercises per workout. And I'd be generally shooting for about 8 to 15 repetitions per exercise. I'd also be thinking about probably 2 good working sets per exercise. Now, this will vary. You've got to remember, this will vary. I've done an episode on optimal training principles as well. So you can go listen to that because I talk in a lot more detail about the way that I set up the mechanics of my training. I don't talk about training a ton, but I have a very, very advanced knowledge with training. I talk more about blood work and sort of dietary stuff, hormone stuff, but the training principle is very important. Like if you are doing really well with the diet and you're taking all the supplements, but your training's sloppy and you don't really know what you're doing, that's gonna hinder your speed to your result. And it's important to remember that the way to lose more body fat is you've got to build muscle. And so the way to build muscle is these weight training principles. Now, I would say think about each week progressive overload. So log your weights you're lifting, and every week you want to try and do a little bit more. You want to try and do a little bit more every week. If you did 100 pounds in week 1, do 105 pounds in week 2. You've got to keep pushing that weight up. You've also got to try to increase your rep count. So like let's say you did 100 pounds for 8 reps. Try to do 105 pounds for 9 reps. Those 2 realms of progressive overload are how you're going to get to your target. You've got to make sure that you are pushing as hard as possible, getting to the point where you're leaving about 1 rep in the tank, if not getting to failure. So if you're pushing the weight and you stop because you're at your top end of your rep count, but you know you could have done more than 2 reps, it's too light. You've got to go heavier. Now, that's also the reason why I like to use the Smith machine and cables, because it's got a much better safety profile. I would say in general, if you're going to a gym to work out, use a lot of machines, the Smith machine or the cables. At home, I will use my Smith machine and cables often because I can push the set right to the edge of mechanical failure without getting stuck. Like I can do a chest press and make sure that that final rep, I can't even get the damn thing all the way up, but I just rack it on the Smith machine and I'm done. You need that intensity. If you don't have that intensity, you will not see the muscle building potential that you could create. So progressive overload, the training split based on how many times a week you're going to do push-pull legs, that type of thing. 5 to 8 exercises per workout, 8 to 15 repetitions, doing 1 or 2 warm-up sets really quickly to get up to that working weight, where the working weight's that challenging weight. Focusing on the progressive overload of more weight each week and try to squeeze out 1 or 2 extra reps each week. You do that as your resistance training base, and that will be a very good foundation for improving your body composition. And remember, this is where you can't just rely on weight loss, because if you're building a ton of muscle, it's going to offset your weight loss. If you're training really hard and you gain 5 pounds of muscle, but you lose 5 pounds of fat, it's going to look like you gained, like your weight didn't change, but you just lost 5 pounds of fat. So your body composition is changing. So remember, don't just focus on body weight. Think about your body composition. That's the key. That's what we want to focus on. Now, other things is going to be movement. So your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It's going to be your step count. You got to make sure that you are getting at least over 10,000 steps a day. If you really want to get an amazing result, 15 to 20,000 steps a day. Now, how the heck do you do that? Get yourself a walking pad and a standing desk. You must. I cannot stress this enough. All the guys and gals that I see struggle with their weight and their body fat percentage, they sit on their ass all day. You're too sedentary. You're sitting at your desk, you're typing on your computer, and you don't move. I'm literally walking while I do this episode. So if you have an office set up, a standing desk and a walking pad, order the thing and get it into your rotation as fast as you can. Because if you can hit 15 to 20,000 steps per day, your fat loss will be so pronounced. It will be face melting. So what I'd be doing is I'd be thinking about starting with getting over 10,000. The average target I tell people is 12 to 15, but the Goldilocks zone is 15 to 20. Walk through the day. So while you're working, just walk slowly all day long. Now, what I would tell you is get outside 2 times a day. So at some point in the morning, at some point in the afternoon, you want 5 to 20 minutes of outdoor walking time. Repurpose that time. So get on a sales call, have a team meeting, like do a live stream, like use that time, listen to a podcast, use that time so you're leveraging what you're doing to make it more sustainable long term. So we want the outdoor time because the light exposure is really important for mitochondrial health. And that's going to help improve sleep patterns. It's going to help improve your energy levels, all that good stuff. But most people don't realize that walking and movement helps with digestion and it helps with energy levels. So if your energy is up and down and you're thinking and feeling like you need more calories because your energy is too low, you need to walk more. And especially you need to get more sunlight and walking. So I will stack outdoor walking time multiple times through the day between meetings and appointments and things to keep priming the pump, to keep my energy really peak state. So you got your step count. You got your outdoor time. If you want bonus points, add a weighted vest, add a ruck vest to it. 20 to 40 pounds for even 20 to 30 minutes as a base. And you do that at some point in the afternoon outside. So now you're checking off multiple things. You're adding weight, which helps with more fat loss. You're getting some light exposure and you're getting your step count up. I would tell you also, you want to be walking before and after meals, especially after meals. After meal walking helps dramatically with insulin sensitivity and the blood glucose response from the food. That will really help you long term. So I cannot stress enough. I would say that, in my opinion, one of the most important pillars that you can address in the next 4 weeks is your step count. It's right up there. It's right up there. So if I was going to give you the best case scenario, 20,000 steps a day, walking pad with a standing desk, walking all day while you work so you don't have to try and sprint at the end to hit your target, weighted vest with 20 to 40 minutes at some point in the afternoon, getting some outdoor time, a morning walk outdoors for 5 to 20 minutes as well. I'd be repurposing that time, listening to a podcast or doing a call or leveraging it some way, shape, or form, and post-meal walking just to finish off. That will really, and it helps with recovery too, by the way. So it really does help with blood flow, lymphatic system distribution, and that's just going to help you in general recover much more optimally from everything that you're doing. Now, let me quickly tie in pillar number 9 that ties off the back of that, where it's light exposure. So I'd be definitely thinking about the morning light in that walk and the afternoon light. Obviously, you can get more in if you have the ability to do that. Make sure that you have blue light blocking filters on your phone, on your computer. You don't want to be slamming yourself with a ton of artificial blue light, especially in the evening. So I use Himalayan salt lamps, candlelit diffusers. We'll use low brightness LEDs, so orange light, red light, that type of thing in the evening. Blue light filter on the phone, blue light filter on the computer, just so you're not getting that melatonin suppression. Because if you don't get good sleep, it will be way harder to get in good shape, way harder. So just think to yourself, reducing down blue light exposure, especially in the evening, and then getting multiple sessions of outdoor light with your sunglasses off. And if you feel confident enough, just wear a tank top or go shirtless if you're walking around your neighborhood and get sun on your skin. That's all of that stuff is going to help so much. So I would tell you in general, the ways to keep your energy good and keep your mood stable is light and movement. Multiple sessions of light plus movement 2 to 5 times a day. I do it 5 or 6 times. I prime the pump multiple times. I'll do a block of work, go do a quick 5-minute priming the pump. Block of work, 5-minute priming the pump. And I tell you, it changed the game for me. It's how I get so much done. Now, pillar number 9 is sleep optimization. I've done a whole episode on sleep optimization. So what I'd be saying, just for the sake of simplicity here, try to eat your last meal 3+ hours before you go to sleep. Because I find for most people, if they eat too close to bed, it will keep their body temperature elevated and they won't sleep as well. So three hours earlier. I'd be making sure that your food quality is very clean. Like all the food principles I've talked about in this episode, you've got to stick with those, because if you eat more processed inflammatory stuff, it's going to have a negative effect on your sleep patterns. It just does. I would also say things like red light at nighttime, so like a Hooga red light panel. Even supplements like magnesium, glycine, theanine, serene. These are some supplements that I personally use that I like, that kind of help wind down the body. Taking that late afternoon, early evening walk outside in the light, ironically enough, helps with sleep. And then really just thinking about getting off social media and reducing down the stimulation at nighttime. If you're watching stimulating TikTok reels and Instagram reels and things like that, it's going to keep your brain super aroused. And the more your brain's working and processing and being aroused, the less likely you will be to relax and get into deep sleep. So you've got to turn that off, put on some relaxing spa music on Spotify, and just connect with your family and just read them a book or something. You've got to learn how to disconnect from the tech. Otherwise, it's going to keep that nervous system redlining and you won't feel good. You just won't. I would say, just to kind of summarize all the stuff here, the next part of this is really just the execution and the consistency. And this is the part that I would say is the missing piece for most people. And that's why I would absolutely give you a call to action to get into either my Anomaly Project course or my Business Athlete Council. Because you can have the prettiest plans. You can go to Grok and ChatGPT and plug in all your information and get it to regurgitate a bunch of information for you. I've seen people do that, and they still not in shape. There's people I know that are like AI nerds that love to like number crunch all their health data into AI, and they're still overweight and out of shape. It's because it's not just an information problem. It's an application problem. And so being in an environment around leaders and people that have the result that you want and are modeling the principles, the habits and routines you need to model is so freaking important. I cannot overstate that enough. I cannot overstate that. Everything that I've suggested here to you today, if you apply that well, it will absolutely get you in amazing shape very quickly. But if you are hit and miss and you're not in a good ecosystem, you will be very inconsistent, and that will be your downfall. So I would tell you, in summary, think about all these different levers as different systems in the body that will help create that flow state you need to get into. So you got your calorie counting model, your calorie counting methods. You've got your micronutrients and your colors. You've got your food quality, one ingredient. You've got like the condiments and the cooking methods. You've got your base supplementation to plug and fill all the holes. You've got your simple peptide stack and your hormone optimization focus. You've got your weight training and your frequency and intensity breakdown. That helps build the muscle mass, which drives metabolism. You have your movement, your walking, your NEAT, all the tools around hitting that higher step count and why it's so important. You've got your sleep optimization, where we're talking about the things that are going to help you get more REM and deep sleep, because if you don't do that, you definitely will not feel very good. Your energy will stay low, you'll take more caffeine, you'll use more stimulants, and you're just going to burn your freaking nervous system into the ground, which is what most people do. And then obviously the light exposure and the circadian timing that comes in with that. With the light exposure is as important as the walking almost. And it's free. It's nothing. If you can take all of that and you can get into some type of accountability system. I have my people post an accountability post every day where they're snapping pictures of their step count, their meals, bits of their workout. And I tell you, they are always the ones that get the best results. They're always the ones that get the best results. And it's that concept of don't eat an apple a day, not 7 on Sunday. Eat an apple a day, not 7 on Sunday. Think about this. If you didn't brush your teeth for a whole month and then you brush your teeth for an hour once a month, do you think you're going to have good oral hygiene? Absolutely not. You've got to stack these core tenets every single day, even if it's a little bit, even if it's a 10-minute workout. You have to stack them, Because what happens is people are inconsistent. They do the teeth brushing once a month, and then they wonder why their teeth are falling out. Because you don't understand the compound effect of these habits on a micro level. So I would say being in my mastermind groups, getting these systems locked down, having someone who can give you wisdom and insight as to like your training intensity, what you might be missing, focusing on a good system with your meals and the portion sizes of your food. And remember, one of the good things about all of this discussion is that these are principles you can use long term, by the way. Yeah, sure, you might want to make them more intense for 4 weeks. Like you might want to pull the calories down a bit more than usual. You might want to hit a slightly higher step count. You might want to train a little bit harder than normal. But you can take these tenets and you can apply them long term and not only get in phenomenal shape, but keep it, sustain it. That's my motivating factor. I'm known for that. Like I've got to the shape I'm in and I've sustained it for years now. Most fitness people, they yo-yo diet. They quote unquote bulk up and then they cut. They bulk, they cut. They bulk, they cut. Because it's not even like necessarily because they want to be super strategic. It's because they can't control their eating habits because they don't address all these tenets effectively. So they're getting a ton of craving and hunger responses and all these negative cues. So just remember, the good thing about this is a 4-week kickstart. But these principles can be used long term. You've got to get your head in the game. We're at a time in the world where I really do think getting your house in order is very, very important. You've got to get fighting fit as strong as possible, as physically healthy as possible, to be as sovereign as possible. I don't know what's going to happen in the world. The time of this, there's wars and everything going on. And I would rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. I'd rather be in phenomenal shape, battle-ready, competent, mentally clear and stable, and not necessarily need all of that from a survival standpoint, than need it and be 50 pounds overweight, have a heart attack, trying to get my family to safety. Because that's what many people are running into, that position. They're going down that path, and they stick their head in the sand like an ostrich because they just think, oh, it's never going to happen to me. Or, I'll get to it eventually. You got to stop that way of thinking. Pros, they take action now and they just execute. And they fail forward and they take imperfect action. And that, my friend, is what a business athlete does. And that's exactly what I want you to do starting today.